Hey, how y'all doing? This is Mongo Slay, and today we're going to talk about Road Warrior Animal. And he passed away on September the 22nd, 2020. It was announced on September the 23rd. So at some point between the 22nd and 23rd, Road Warrior Animal passed away. I'm not going to do an obituary or anything like that. I'm also not going to go too deeply into the history of the Road Warriors. I did that with my Dark Side of the Ring review, which is going to be in the description. So if you're a newer listener and you haven't gone back and listened to that episode will be in the description, so you can go back and listen to sort of where the Road Warriors came from, how they met, all that different sort of stuff. I don't want to go through that here. Here is going to be sort of me lamenting that Joe Laurinaitis is the last warrior. That really he was the last real warrior. If you don't know what I mean, there was a time in the late '80s to early to mid '90s where just about everybody was a warrior of some kind, and there were four major warriors. There was Kerry Von Erich, the modern day warrior. He started calling himself the modern day warrior in the early '80s, like '82, '83. Then you had the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal, who debuted in the mid '80s, '82, '83, '84, or something like that. It might have been before '84, probably like '82 or '83. And then you had the Ultimate Warrior, Jim Hellwig, who of course started wrestling in the later '80s and became a big star in the early '90s. And now all four of them are dead. And Animal was the last one. And it's not just a piece of my childhood missing, even though it is. But I remember the first time I saw the Road Warriors was in the early '90s. They had already had their NWA run, which I did not see, and they were coming into the WWE. And I did not. I was looking at wrestling with a child's brain. I was not all, whoa, Demolition. They're trying to be like, they're trying to be like Demolition, or even the other way around. I just saw it as, oh, two cool guys who wear spikes and had face paint, and they're going to fight these other guys who have spikes and face paint. This is going to be all very cool. It's going to be very cool. It's going to be very fun. And I was immediately enamored with the Road Warriors, and they became my favorite tag team. Over the years, of course, they became my favorite tag team, and they still are. As much as other teams are sort of defined by all of the crazy stuff that they've done, like the Hardys and Edge and Christian and the Dudley Boys and all that type of stuff. Setting each other on fire and thumbtacks and jumping from high places. And yeah, the Road Warriors did a little of that. They did some of that with like sort of the scaffold matches with the Midnight Express, but I didn't see any of that stuff. So for me, it was purely off of how they looked, how they approached the business, their larger than life personas, how they came across everything. And then, of course, I was inundated as a child watching the WWF with memorabilia, action figures. I didn't have the wrestling buddies, but I did have the World Warrior action figures. I got to play with them in the games and, stuff like that. You got to see them every week, and you became like really big fans of them. I knew people who had the toy spikes, and sometimes you would see people who would have the face paint, like at Halloween and stuff like that. And it's great. It was absolutely great stuff. And I feel like a lot of kids have been robbed of that, robbed of that innocence of being able to have fun with wrestling. And, I was able to have fun with it, so I didn't really think about it, how did they do a headlock, and, whether they threw a proper clothesline, even though they threw the hell of clotheslines, Like, there are some pretty dope, crazy clotheslines in some of the matches. They did not care about throwing clotheslines. They were snug. They were quite snug. It was something about, you had the name Warrior, the nickname Warrior, and you let it rip. All of them. We know the Ultimate Warrior didn't give a shit about anything. And Kerry Von Erich was also pretty stiff. They worked stiff in Dallas anyway. But it was sort of that influential appearance and everything. It's sort of, no, they were. I don't think they were the first to really bring in the Mad Max look and the Mad Max appearance to pro wrestling. I'm pretty sure it happened before they had showed up, but they got over with it. They were the most popular with it, and everybody who came after them is basically just mimicking what the Road Warriors were doing, what the Legion of Doom were doing, and you know that was that was I'm pretty sure that was a good feeling for him. But of course, at the time when you're trying to compete with these people and they're stealing your ideas, that's probably not that great. But looking back on it, he probably really kind of was happy that so many people thought so much of them that they was going to steal their ideas, because you know what they say about imitation being the sincerest form of flattery. But since 2003, which is when Hawk died, Animal has been carrying the flag. He's been sort of carrying the flag of the Road Warriors. He's been the guy doing all the interviews, all the podcasts. He's been the only one that could talk and tell the story of, the backstage drama between the two. And you had these guys who were, close as brothers and had been together for years, and the ups and the downs between the two of them. And each one has a role, and they are a harkening back to a tag team era that really very few teams today continue to move on. And that's teams having a shared identity and it being a shared concept between the two guys. Like the Rock and Roll Express. Like you look at the Rock and Roll Express right now, you never see Gibson without Morton. You never see Morton without Gibson. Even though Morton may be considered a bigger star by, pure wrestling fans. Because Morton was the seller and Gibson was the hot tag guy. But you never see them one without the other. It was never an instance where you talked about one without the other. It was always about the Rock and Roll Express. It's always about the team. And there is something unique about that with tag team wrestling. And the Road Warriors were sort of those guys. And Joe has been sort of the guy who has been carrying that flag pretty much by himself since 2003. And you know what? It's been incredibly difficult for him, because when you're in a tag team, you're defined by another person as well. And when one of those people are dead, it's hard for you to carry that torch by yourself. So this is when you had Animal doing, guys got to make a buck somehow. And he's older, he can't really go. So they would team him up with tag team partners. And it wasn't just WWE with Hyde and Reich. There was other promotions who would bring in their own young guy and put the paint on him and put the spikes on him, and Animal would be like, sure, whatever, just make sure that. So I'm not going to blame him for that, but he was carrying the torch, and he carried the torch as long as he could, and then in his later years there was a lot of contention with him in WWE, especially with his brother working in the office, and Animal kind of felt that he was part of this hugely drawing tag team. And pretty much, from what I've heard, it was Vince McMahon's favorite tag team was the Road Warriors, and he didn't get a job as a trainer, or he didn't get a job in the office, which he he wanted, and his brother worked there. And that's another thing that a lot of people, that's kind of unknown to a lot of people, is the Laurinaitis family is a wrestling family. There's at least 3 of them that have been in the business. Johnny Ace, known as John Laurinaitis, People Power. That's his brother, and his brother, they have another brother named Marcus, who was also a wrestler. I forget where he wrestled though, but I'm pretty sure it was in WCW maybe, or late stage NWA or something like that. But he never really became much of anything, and nobody really cares about Johnny Ace, the surfer guy, outside of Japan. Maybe he's a big star on somebody's message board or something like that because he was a star in Japan, but nobody in the United States cares about Johnny Ace. So Joe was the star, and they didn't really. He probably felt like he wasn't getting his proper due. And for people who didn't watch my concussion video, Joe Laurinaitis was one of the people suing the WWE during the concussion lawsuit. So he's been off, not being able to carry the brand as far as he could, like being on Raw, like being on SmackDown, like, being part of the video games and creating new action figures and all that sort of stuff. He hasn't been able to be a part of that because he was part of this lawsuit that had been going on for the past couple of years, because there was so much heat between the office and, Road Warrior Animal. And some people say, well, you shouldn't care about WWE. You shouldn't care about whether he gets into their Hall of Fame, even though I think he's already in. But to be quite honest, the reason why people care is because WWE is the custodian of their entire legacy. Everything that they've ever done as far as being the Road Warriors is owned by the WWE. So who can better help him monetize his brand than the WWE? So it really just doesn't make any sense for people to be like to shun that. It's like when you could create action figures and sell toys and be in video games, that's royalties that they could be making. That's money they could be making. That's money that he definitely earned and deserved. But because he got wrapped up in that whole bullshit lawsuit, then there's years of lost income, that he could have been making if he had done, negotiated and worked with the company that he missed out on. And it's really unfortunate. And then as far as being the only one to be able to carry the brand, that's tragic, man. We missed out, especially the younger fans, younger than, 22 or something like that. You missed out on a lot with the Road Warriors not really being promoted as much as they should be because of that stupid fucking lawsuit, and it's a shame because you had this guy and he was carrying the brand and he was trying to get out there and do different things. And the only thing that you really was told about the Road Warriors is that Hawk was a drunk and that they got into, and they did stupid stuff outside the ring. Like they'll show you the Dark Side of the Rings episodes of, Joe talking about the dark side or the bad days with Hawk. They don't really talk that much about the good stuff. Because the good stuff is where it's at. Why I don't understand why people are obsessed with the backside of the ring anyway. I wouldn't start calling it the backside of the ring. I don't understand why people are obsessed with that. The memories are the stuff that we saw, and we get inundated with the negatives all the time. There's a lot of positives, so there's some good things I want to talk about, and it's going to be a lot of me going off memory. But I'm going to talk about 3 or 4 specific matches. Now, the scaffold match with the Midnight Express. It's not something that I actually saw live. I saw it when I got the DVD box set for the Road Warriors. Again, my favorite tag team. I had to get it, and I got it with the documentary and everything. That's the first time I ever seen it, and it was probably in my mid-20s, and it came out in like the 90s. The match happened in like 83 maybe. Let me look at this box set and see what year the scaffold match was. The scaffold match was in the year 1986 against the Midnight Express. But they also had a pretty good match with the Koloffs, Ivan and Nikita Koloff at the Great American Bash 86. They also held but my favorite matches are, they had a great match with the Hart Foundation in 1991. But my favorite matches, and this is going to be really weird, is that they did a Chicago street fight at WrestleMania 13. That is one of my favorite Road Warrior matches. The Chicago street fight, for those of you who don't know, maybe you've seen WrestleMania, you've heard of WrestleMania 13 because you've heard of that one match, the Steve Austin and Bret Hart. But earlier in the night, there was a Chicago street fight. It was Ahmed Johnson and the Road Warriors versus the Nation of Domination. That would be Farouk, Crush. Was Savio Vega there? And I'm pretty sure D'Lo Brown was an unofficial member in that match. They had the numerical advantage. But it was chaos. And I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, holy it wasn't blood and guts and nothing like that. It was just craziness. There was, people falling all over. I just will never forget the huge bump Farouk, Ron Simmons took off the top of that top rope when somebody yanked the noose. I believe it was a noose or some type of rope that he was holding, and he took this huge bump from the top rope to the floor, and he bounced like boom, boom, and I was like, damn. It was crazy. It was so crazy. I loved that match so much, and I also was a fan of their feud with the Godwins because the Godwins were a big, rugged team. They were kind of stupid and silly, and today it'll be, of course, panned and laughed at. It was panned and laughed at in '97 when it took place, but their feud was serious, and it's so much that the Road Warriors had injured, I believe it was Henry Godwin, or was it Phineas? It was one of the two on the Doomsday device. He took the Doomsday device and he landed on his neck, and it kind of made the Godwins evil. That's when they started doing the hitting people with, even though they was already hitting people with buckets, they were really kind of like really badass, hardcore dudes at that point. And they had some fun matches, It was just hardcore, big guy slapping meat, you know. And the last match I want to talk about is one of my favorite matches with Sting and Lex Luger. I'm pretty sure they had more than one match with Sting and Lex Luger in WCW, but that's probably one of my favorite Road Warriors tag team matches from WCW. But you need to go back and watch as much of them as you can, because they were a team that got over, you know, being able to be, you know, off persona, off being able to, you know, have that image of being these gigantic badasses who look like they would tear you in half, sound like they would tear you in half, and then will literally go out there and tear people in half. It's simple, you know. It's not complex, you know. It's what I love about wrestling, and so I'm going to miss Joe Laurinaitis, Road Warrior Animal, and let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like this video, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later.